up, my brilliant little blueberries? This is Rob from Gay Guy Plays, and today on The Daily Grind, we're going to be using little tweaks in order to save a handful of Warframes. Now, this video idea actually came up from one of my most recent live streams, where we were talking about the current state of Valkyr and what I would do to improve her gameplay. Then all of a sudden, a light bulb went off in my head and said, why don't you do all these little tweaks for every single Warframe in game? Because let's be real, there's really nothing all that interesting to talk about in Warframe at the moment. They've sent over augments, and I know that Glassmaker is coming up soon, but none of it's really capturing my attention like this kind of subject matter right now. But as I started to go through the roster, I realized, yo, there are some Warframes that really need a massive overhaul in order to bring them into a new era, and there was no way that I was going to be able to tackle them in one video. So I chose 4 specific Warframes that I think have some really good potential to them. In fact, one of them is fucking absolutely fantastic, but I feel like if you just flipped a switch on them a little bit, maybe made space in their kit for another ability to kind of boost them up, they could really come into their own and be bright shining stars that they all deserve to be. So let's go ahead and start off with the one who actually ignited this whole conversation, Miss Valkyr. Now y'all know I love a little Catwoman action, but one of the big things that I've always had an issue with when it came to Valkyr was the range of her Hysteria claws. Those things are just way too freaking short. And what we started talking about is, if you actually paid attention, oh my god, this is gonna date me so bad, but like the old X-Men arcade games, when you would pull out Wolverine, whenever he would slash his claws, it would never just be the range of his claws. They would always add these kind of extra effects that kind of showed these extra range on his slashes. And I was like, we really need to bump up the range of that specific exalted weapon. Because at this point in time, Warframe is all about taking down mobs and mobs of enemies, and if you're really only able to hit maybe 1 or 2 people in front of you, that's not really doing it. I would also say, listen, I know we're talking about little tweaks, but if y'all wanted to come through her animations for that, her little combo set, and maybe turn it into some wide cleaves, I'd be down for that as well. The other little tweak that I would change, and this is why I said little tweaks in quotation, because some of these little tweaks are little tweaks, but really, how difficult are they going to be to actually implement into the game? But number 1, let's make Warcry recastable. Y'all were able to do it for Mr. Chroma. You should be able to do it for Miss Valkyr, right? And remove paralysis completely and just add the paralysis finisher effect to Warcry. So now you get the damage boost, all of the enemies are slow, and they have the the paralysis kind of stun attached to them as well. We've actually seen this with the Naramon Void Dash. You can open up enemies permanently with that Void Dash. So why not go ahead and allow these enemies to be in that, in that finisher available state, using that, because it's really important, because as you guys know, Hysteria claws are primarily crit focused. So I'm thinking in my head, they need this ability in order to take down some of the bigger targets. So I figured, let's just go ahead and do that, and then you have a whole nother space for a third ability to be able to kind of grant her a little bit more flexibility in her kit. Also, what I would love to see, because we're at Melee 2.99997 right now. We're not all the way into Melee 3.0 yet. When y'all introduce that whole channeling fury ability, limit break, kind of demon mode kind of thing going on, to be able to add a bonus effect to her claws, because she really needs something extra to those claws in order to make them feasible. But otherwise, I still love the gameplay of Valkyr just clawing through enemies and being able to access these finishers. Opening up another ability slot for her would be absolutely fantastic, and if you guys want to, let me know down in the comment section below what new ability you would give to Valkyr if she did have a free ability slot. Moving on, this is a long, y'all remember when we had that whole Trash Queen moment where literally we were just basura, and we were just beating that dead horse? Here's an even deader horse that we have not talked about in a while. It's Zephyr. Let the bitch fly. Can we just please let Zephyr fly already? And the way that I'm proposing this is her jet stream. Why does she have to have this weird charge up time and then she just hovers? Like, there is, you know, the whole functionality where you can tap or you can hold. Why not let the tap just be a dash, you know, like it is right now, and instead of having the hold and charge up into a weird hover that doesn't really play well indoors anyway, just have the hold kind of be like a little quick puff, like a little fart, like she's been elevated into like a fart stance animation, and now she can just fly. Why not let her do that? I don't really think that it's gonna make her gameplay all that much more crazy, but it would allow her to really, because the rest of her kit's a little bit plain. Let's be real. The rest of her kit's a little bit plain. At least that would give her something more to work with. Now, we all know that her second ability, I don't think a lot of people are very big fans on it, but I figured that we'll go ahead and give it a quick twist, because along with all of this, we're talking about like, ooh, you know, Zephyr could kind of like, wow, I'm making a lot of Marvel references. You know, Angel? Where he can like send out, or Archangel specifically, because I believe that's where he's able to like shoot out metal feathers, right? Why not let her shoot out feathers with her like air blast, whatever? So any enemy that's been affected with air blast will have like a little feather sticking out of them. You know how we have it on the Contagion Exodias for the Plague Star things where you can kind of like fling it. Why not have like those little, like a little feather effect like in their head? And what you can do is after a short period of time, they'll detonate and do a big slash proc in an area of effect. So now, if enemies are clustered together, they can do all of these different slash procs going off at the same time and give Zephyr a little bit more of an offensive boost, because she's extremely defensive at this point in time. So personally, that's really the only things that I would do to Zephyr. We've been cheering for it for a long time. She's not an ostrich. She's got wings. She's got little jets out of her prime feet, and she's got full-on feathers. Like, let her fly, okay? Next up is Hydroid. Well, you know what? Zephyr and Hydroid, like, I feel like those two are always kind of battling it at the same spot where they just always need a little bit of help. But I'm going to put this out there. His 2 is so old school. The Tidal Surge, where he, like, you know, becomes a wave and he rushes an enemy, that's old school Warframe. We used to have that with, like, the single slash dashes. We have the Rhino Charge. It is too old school for Hydroid, right? He has a really interesting kit, and he has a really interesting theme. Now, of course, his 2 does allow him to, like, move forward and dash forward with his puddle. So instead, what I'm thinking is, when you get into your puddle form, if you want, you can hold down the puddle button and you'll charge forward instead of doing nothing, because it currently does nothing. So at least that way, you can still have the dash in puddle form. We could still keep the dash in puddle form because we know that you can't move very quickly in there. Yes, Apollo, hold on, I'm making a video. I have cats. It's very difficult sometimes. There's 2 of them now. I love them to death, but sometimes they get in the way. I love you. But I figured let's replace that with a new ability, because really that's all you're using his 2 for, is to just rush forward, right? So I actually wanted to introduce something, and I got really geeked out on this one because I was like, let's look up pirate names. And I thought that this ability would be so cool to call it No Quarter. And basically what it would be is a self buff that would grant bonus weapon status chance, right? But here's the gig, because we gotta make it interesting, right? It increases armor based on the amount of enemies inflicted with status in an area of effect. So now we kind of like allow Hydroid to still be very offensive, but it really kind of relies on him and his team to be able to spread all of these statuses around in order to make him a lot more tanky. Now, of course, in his puddle form, he can go ahead and completely evade damage and regenerate health if you have the augments on. But in this way, he still has a little bit more survivability, so that when you go into higher stages, if you're taking on specific enemies that you know can really be bullet sponges, you're applying status upon status upon status upon status on that enemy, because they ain't dying, right? They're not dying quick. So you can apply all that status, and then you can retain some damage resistance from it. And it's very pirate-like to see your enemies suffer, and for you to be like, oh, I'm reveling in it, right? No Quarter. Such a good name. I love it. All right. Now, the last Warframe that I wanted to talk about, y'all are going to be like, Rob, you really feel like they need some help? I'm only going to help them in one way, shape, or form. And this is one of the few times that you're going to hear me say this. I think we need a little help when it comes to Equinox. And that help will come with her being able to swap between her two different forms. Now, as many of you guys kind of sort of know, I don't know if you guys know my stance on this, but my stance on this is very like abstract. It's not like as solid because you can't just claim black and white. There are different shades of gray in there. But there are certain augments that I feel completely change the gameplay of a Warframe to the point where, yes, it does require a slot, because there are strength that comes from that is just so much more powerful, right? And then there are certain augments that I'm just like, yo, you couldn't add that to the base ability? Like, that doesn't really change them that much. It just improves their gameplay a whole fucking lot, right? That should just be built in. So me personally, I feel like Equinox, with her ability to retain the mend and maim charges, I think that should just be built in. In fact, I feel like that should be built in for all of her abilities. Anything that you've retained on one end should be retained on the next one. So if you're using Peaceful Provocation, right? All of the charge that you've been able to gather from Peaceful Provocation, when you swap over into your different form, it should retain and be converted. Same thing goes for Mend and Maim. If you have all of these charges on Mend, right? But yo, everybody's healthy. You should be able to swap over to day form and then go ahead and pop off a Maim, pop back into day form, and, you know, get all defensive and all that kind of stuff. Like, I feel that would really just enrich her gameplay, and that is something that I totally feel should be 100% built into her kit and not an augment. I'm sorry, the cat was here, I touched him, and I think I touched my face, and now there's a cat hair on my face, and it's making me crazy. But yeah, I was also considering doing a video on augments that should be built in and augments that I don't think should be built in. Because, let's be real, not all augments are made equally. I mean, that's just 100% fact, right? There are some augments that you're like, you want me to use a slot on this? I mean, maybe an Exilus? Maybe, but even then that's pushing it. And there are certain augments that you're like, yup, that's going in the build, 100%, let's go, that's in there, we're gonna make a build around it. And I feel like maybe there should be a little bit more of a level playing field. But in this specific case, when it comes to Equinox, that one from Mend and Maim should be absolutely built into her kit. Regardless, let me know how you feel about everything that I've stated here down in the comments below. What additional ability would you give to Valkyr? Do you believe that Zephyr should fly? And what augments do you think should be 100% built into Warframes? Because we always hear it in the forums. This should just be added in. This should just be added in. I don't think everything should be added in, but there are definitely some out there that I'm like, yeah, that could be a part of the general kit. Regardless, that about does it for me for now. Let me know what Warframe you think that I should try to save next. So, some of them is just gonna be harder than others. Toss that down in the comments below too. And as always, love somebody, hurt nobody, and touch your body. Also, make sure you're washing your hands, okay? I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.